Figured I'd take this bag of explosives down there and ask them if they didn't mind us, blowing them the fuck up.
Boozer.
It is incredible how far the gaming industry as a whole has come in the half-century since its inception. We have gone from sprites on a screen to high-fidelity graphics that, when done well, do a good imitation of real life. And in between those two preferences, multiple branches of different genres from developers and shareholders who want your attention and, most importantly, money. Here on Calixi, I tend to focus on horror-based games, or ones at least adjacent to the genre, as many of these products are like fine wine. As time goes on and our minds change, so does our perception and taste in the games that we play. Even years later, it is not uncommon for new connections to be made, or a secret or two in a game to be discovered, which builds up a surge of interest in that product once again. Recently, I finished Days Gone, a game that on the surface seems like your generic action-adventure survival horror game. However, the more I got into it, the more I found myself invested into what it had to offer. Once the credits rolled, I felt a bit sad. It was like saying goodbye to a friend you haven't seen in years who lives on the other side of the world. But like the random guy on the internet that I am, I wanted to explore the reasons why I felt that way and how exactly it was accomplished. Do not worry. I'm not here to convince you to play the game or tell you that it's an underrated masterpiece. I simply wanted to discuss what I call the Days Gone loop and how its execution leaves the player wanting more. First and foremost, let's begin the loop setup with the story. The survival horror genre is not extravagant in that department like a JRPG is. The horror genre in general is more about trickling bits and pieces here and there to tether the player along until the very end. If you give it away too soon, then the shock value is diminished. So at the start of Days Gone, it's immediately apparent that the game isn't just about killing freaks. As I promise you, these characters love to talk.
What, red hair? No. It was his boots. He wore these rattlesnake boots dyed with god-awful red color. He made quite the impression.
No, I bet.
As the story begins to spool up, it can be off-putting as the player naturally wants to go out, explore the world, and, well, take out zombies. That is the whole point of the game, right? Well, it's not the whole point, but it is a large portion of that point. But more on the gameplay later. Back to the story setup, it is done as a slow burn. The further you go into the game, the higher the stakes become. It has its peaks and it has its valleys, but the most important aspect of it all are the characters within it. And within those characters are the relationships that are established throughout the journey. The main character, who is named Deacon St. appears as the classic stoic type, but in reality, he is more sensitive than he portrays. This is not apparent at first, but as events take place, you see him open up more and more to those around him. While he's capable of killing, he is also capable of compromising and doing what he has to do to line up a better outcome in the end. This man will go through hell and back if it means saving a friend or tracking down information to help a stranger in need. But do not get it twisted here. Deacon is no pushover when it comes to his justice, even if it will cost him his life. Another character on this list that I would like to talk about is Boozer. Boozer is Deacon's right-hand man and was there at the start of the outbreak. His arc throughout the game feels almost at odds with Deacon's due to certain events, but the payoff at the end is more than worth the investment. Unlike Deacon, Boozer starts compassionate and energetic, but swiftly turns dark and brooding. I will say that the attention to detail, especially when it comes to the characters, is appreciated. I could go on and on about each one, but I will spare you from that wall of text. Without going into extensive detail with the plot, it's like looking out of your room window on a cloudy but sunny day. As the story progresses, you get glimpses of sunlight peeking through the clouds until eventually the clouds dissipate for good. Now, there are definitely times where the story feels like it drags on, but outside of that, it is satisfying to see how these characters and their relationships with each other develop. The second and equally important setup for this loop happens to be the gameplay. Melee and gunplay is satisfactory, but what did me in was the crafting. While it can be tedious at times, it can also be rewarding when it works. Whether you need bandages for healing yourself or you pick up some parts to create some explosions, there is always something going on. One of my biggest gripes with open world games, just so happens to be crappy exploration treasures spread across the map. It almost feels like a spit in the face to explore a brand new area and only get items you either cannot carry due to maximum capacity or are not worth your time picking up. But with the crafting system being an integral part of the game, you oftentimes than not will find yourself scrounging around for more material. I mean, come on, how else can you fix your broken motorcycle with just random cogs and screws? While it is by no means perfect, I found that the revolving need for supplies to be a big contributor to the loop, as it always leaves the player wondering what is around the next corner. Speaking of corners, the player will encounter Nero checkpoints spread throughout the map as well. These checkpoints usually consist of a minor puzzle involving you tracking down a fuse or a gas canister to start up the generator that powers the unit. Inside these units are various crafting materials, injectors that can increase one of the 3 stats that Deacon has, and audio tapes that explore the encounter with the freaks from the viewpoint of Nero.
We got a lot of problems, soldier. Which one are you talking about?
We got another train coming in hot.
Get those people to move back. Move back. Radio command, we got no more room. I told them we need another dozen backhoes out here, or we gotta shut this site down.
Nero, by the way, stands for National Emergency Response Organization. While these are optional, they do add in a well-balanced mix of gameplay, followed by just enough story to keep the player engaged until the next checkpoint is found. Last, but not least, which sealed the deal for me, are the side quests. There is nothing inherently unique about these, but listen, hear me out. The goal of a side quest in any game is not only extend the player's time in the game, but to also reward them for doing more than the status quo. By going out of your way, you gain trust towards whatever camp that you completed the quest with, and a little bit of dialogue with the requester. Higher trust gives the player access to better weapons, accessories, and motorcycle modifications. So with some investment here and there, the player can make their journey throughout the game easier with access to a more potent arsenal if they choose to do so. But it is here within that transition between starting the side quests and ending them that I found to be the most important. During the journey to the site of interest, you naturally make stops to gather items for crafting, finding fuel cans to refuel the bike, and stop to explore points of interest on the map. I understand that may sound boring or redundant, but it is not always that way. What I'm getting at here is the journey that goes along with the request. I found that the side quests are the best time for me to take a nice long ride on the motorcycle and hear the engine roar off in a distance after an intense story segment. It is like a ride home on a Friday after a long work week, implying you do not live in a big city. It is that silence in between the chaos that makes this game loop what it is. If you need time to breathe, then go for a ride. Or, you want more action? Then hit the road and head to the next destination. So, with a better understanding of how the game works now, let me take it from the top here. The Days Gone loop works as follows. First, the player starts the game, and in traditional story fashion, a lot of it is drip-fed through segments as you progress through the world. One encounter leads to another, while one resolution creates another conflict. Secondly, in between those resolutions and conflicts comes the gameplay, which can be as hard as you want it to be. This means if you are willing to explore and gather up items for crafting bandages, bombs, stronger melee weapons, and traps, you are likely to be at an advantage. But due to the survival horror aspect of the game, each gunshot or weapon swing costs a resource. This means you eventually have to seek out more material or a camp to restock for the next battle. Finally, there are the side quests, which unlock higher tiers of your weapons, improve durability and range on your motorcycle, and help to break up the go 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 nature of the story. Sometimes it is important to step back and breathe after a heavy plot twist or traumatic scene. So instead of worrying about the next arc, why not go out and blast some of those tweaked out freaks? As I assure you, you will need anything you can get your hands on when you are faced with taking out hordes of them. I am aware that this loop isn't for everyone, especially with this game taking me 40 hours to complete due to its frivolous story segments, in addition to me hitting up a good portion of the side quests. Honestly, the game could have been shortened by a third with no impact on the overall story, but I am just a man on the internet. Even with its flaws, the experience it brought was unique enough for me to bring it up, just in case you have not tried it for yourself yet. To those who have played it, well, if you know, you know. But as always, I implore you to give it a shot and see if it sticks. I mean, worst case scenario, you get trapped in the same loop that I did, but at least you already know what's coming.